All right, here we go. I hope everybody's doing great right now. I'm gonna do this video. There's a light back there. Let me try to move it. Or is it futile? There it is. So I wanted to do a little, just a little conversation, I guess, a little commentary here. Maybe a little commentary on Vincent Van Gogh's irises. It's a painting very dear to my heart, and I know many people love this painting. Van Gogh definitely has gotten a lot of, what would we say, credit lately, right? He's gotten a lot of popularity. I think, especially in the from what I remember, right, in the mid '90s, late '90s, and it seems to be increasing. The popularity of this artist. I think the guy was a genius. I think that he was just, it was truly the misunderstood artist. Now, but in any way, I'm in no way I'm trying to do a academic commentary on this painting. This is just me. I'm an artist. My name is Jose Trujillo. Spells Trujillo, Trujillo, and I love art. I'm an artist. I create artwork. So this is from an artist's point of view. I really dig the way that he created this painting. I'm sure many of you do as well, and I'm going to show you a little. I'm going to tell you a little bit of why I think this painting is so damn magical. This is called Irises, painted in 1889, and I'm going to start out by saying that blue is definitely the thing that overpowers, right? This painting. It's the color that overpowers. The movement and the dance of the plants here, if you can see right there, this was a time where artists, during this time, right, impressionists, post-impressionists, he's a post-impressionist, they're fascinated by Japanese woodcuts and Japanese art, Japanese prints. And Van Gogh was definitely one of those guys, right? He was interested in Japanese art. It was in trend, but I think it was a little bit avant-garde, It was definitely a trend. But he nailed it really well. He understood it, right? He understood prints. He worked with prints. He understood prints. And I think that helped him a lot with his drawing skills, the way he created the work, the way he was able to represent it to painting, right? He understood prints for sure. And the drawings that he does, right? They almost seem like ink, like sumi ink, right? They almost seem like an effortless brushstroke. This was painted in 1889, if I'm not mistaken. And during this time was like the height of the Impressionist movement, right? Like just about Monet and Renoir and all these other cats were already accepted by at least somewhat accepted in the market. They never really accepted this guy, right? Van Gogh. But I think that the composition that he did here, this is a garden, right? The composition looks almost, for me, it almost looks with the clarity, the way he created everything, it looks like something composed by Peter Paul Rubens or one of the Spanish Baroque painters. It's just so well orchestrated. It's just really, really well done. I love the fact that he put this flower right here some people might think there's a juxtaposition to this other ones right here, but I think he saw himself as this lonely flower. This cat was very smart. The problem is that his emotions were not handled right, as many of us. But this cat was definitely very smart. And if that wasn't him, that was the purity he was seeking, right? That idea, right, of that lonely flower, that just like the rest of them, but misunderstood, right? Misunderstood from the bunch in the same field. And I like that they're almost all dancing, but this one is not, right? The other ones are almost they're open. I mean, it's open, but the other ones seem to be more in a state of movement, right? They're moving, they're dancing, and this one right here is just still. And I think that's the idea for me, anyways. For me, right? This is not an academic commentary. This is just me, right? Me as an artist looking at this, my observations. I think that's the stillness that he was looking for. He was longing for when he created his artwork. He was trying to look for that moment. We now call the zone. Some people call inspiration, or being present, rooted, grounded. Different hippies use different words, and now the hipsters are using different words too, which is, I think it's all the same. But I think he was looking for that, right? As we all are when we look at artwork. This flower always throws me off. It's and the way he placed it, right? Where he placed it is just so strategic. And I still don't understand why a lot of people believe that he was like a child. He didn't paint like children drawings, that he wasn't. He didn't understand what he was doing. If you understand anything about composition, the slightest thing about composition, he used the rule of thirds to place this baby right here, right? He's using the rule of thirds to place this one right here in the upper left corner. Very, very strategic. Especially because the flowers are dancing this way, right? So it takes you off. It's like a little slap, right? Because it starts right here, almost like a traditional landscape. There's mass in one place or another, right? Also in seascapes we see that, especially with boats and sails and this type of paintings. There's mass in a corner, right? And then it just kind of drives you, and it just hits you right here. This is what I get, anyways, out of this painting. It almost seems like even the plants want you to, these plants are a bit heavy, right, from irises, to be moved very easily by the wind, and it almost seems like they're pointing, right? They're pointing this direction. This is the place where the eye rests. There's all this movement, and then the eyes gets to rest there. And also very strategic, because if you're gonna paint white, you're gonna do some sort of grays, right? So it almost seems like he also knew where to put the grays. And most people don't think of Van Gogh or this artist using grays, but they were masters at using grays. They just used it in different ways. They were trying to run away from the school of Gustave Courbet, which was the head, the big dog of the. How's it going, James? The big dog of the realist movement, right? He's a tough guy when it came to the leading, right, the alpha dog in the realist movement, and people were trying to. Especially the post-impressionists, right? The post-impressionists were even trying to walk away, or run, I guess, not walk. They were trying to run as far away from the impressionists, right? Because they were challenging the status quo. Every movement challenges the status quo and takes it farther, takes it beyond. And this is one of the reasons why people can't understand still, right? we can't understand contemporary art and postmodern art now, and it's because it's challenging the way we see things. So, we get disgusted the same way that people got disgusted when they saw these paintings. Like today, we look at these paintings and we're like, oh, wow. But remember, this was the 1800s. This was the time when people were fascinated by realism, right? Their ideas of realism, how real things are supposed to look. And this was a person that was painting how the exterior felt. I love that. Mike Latimer says, Van Gogh painted the landscape of his soul. I love that. So well put. That's exactly it. Van Gogh was definitely experimenting, going beyond the traditional ideas, because by that time the Impressionist ideas were already somewhat established, which was go paint outside, which they call plein air, right? And remember, if you don't know this, the reason why they got to paint outside is because they're experimenting also with new paints, right? Paint they could take with them. The tube of paint was recently invented, so these guys were taking tubes of paint. It was a paint on the go, right? And Van Gogh was doing the same thing, painting outside, but he was no longer just trying to capture the light. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't an objective, but that wasn't the main objective, where the Impressionists were trying to capture the cycles of light, right? If you pay attention outside, it's not just light, dark, and evening and night. There's many cycles, which these guys acted as scientists, right? Monet was acting like a scientist, recording the different variations in the cycles and the tonality that light was rendering over an object, right? He was showering this light and it changed, and he was able to capture that, right? He was able to see that as a scientist would. Extreme observation. That's why they call Monet the eye, right? I think Cézanne called him the eye. And anyways, Van Gogh, I don't want to gear towards Monet too much here, but Van Gogh knew this, right? He knew of this. He knew of these guys, but he was a loner, right? He was a lone wolf. And he was definitely moving away from all of this and stepping into something that deeper waters, right? Again, this is for this time, right? This was painted in 1889. So for people back then, this is like us today seeing maybe a Rothko, right? A Rothko painting and being like, what the hell, right? When people see those swatches of paint, this is the same way that people perceived Van Gogh, right? This is beyond what Monet was doing. Monet was doing patches of paint, and Van Gogh was saying, look, I'm going to paint how I feel when I experience the landscape. Now, this is a very different approach. Right, Monet, Renoir, Alfred Sisley, and other dudes. They learned from a couple of guys who were painting outside already, who were painting outdoors, and Monet especially. You learn from this guy who's I forgot his name. Anyways, that's not important. But he was a painter of the outdoors. And they started learning how to sit there and create observation, right? Like really observe the landscape. So that it was more of a scientific approach, I think, to an extent. And I think Van Gogh was more of a poet than the rest of the guys. Van Gogh was introspective. Van Gogh was, let me see, right? And as I see here, again, as I mentioned, these blue flowers, right, almost representing the rest of the population. They're beautiful. They're not only do they look the same, so they can blend in, right? But they're also dancing. They almost look like they're in a dance. At least that's the perception, right? But when we see this guy right here, right, this flower right here, which I believe Van Gogh was trying to say that it meant purity, and not because of the idea of purity, like a white dove only, but because usually flowers in artwork are placed are moved and placed alone. You see plants and then you see that one flower, right? And this is a very Zen thing. It's almost Buddhist, like the practice of a flower, staring at a single flower. And I think this guy was able to capture that. Now, I know I'm far-fetching here, right? But these are my observations. These are not these are not the Academy of blah blah blah. This is me, right? A painter from a painter's perspective. I believe that Van Gogh was trying to illustrate. Look, when I paint, this is what I get to touch, right? I get to touch something deeper, right? I get to go deeper. I'm not only looking to render the landscape. I'm finding myself, right? I'm finding myself, and the other guys were already touching that, right? That's why we have these things that these other guys were already touching it. And when I mean touching it, I'm talking about from a. I think again, now I'm gonna have to share this with you guys. I think painting is a very spiritual practice. You have to learn how to surrender to your mind. I believe that. I believe that if you're truly serious about painting, your mind has to surrender, because the mind always wants to cut, right? It wants to almost interfere with the artistic process, and I don't think it's just in painting. I think it's in anything you do with quality. You have to be able to learn how to surrender the mind. And yes, I use the word surrender because you can't beat it, right? You can't beat it. There's no beating it. You just have to surrender. And I think Van Gogh found this every time he created artwork. I remember he had a very troubled emotions, very troubled life, and it was during a lot of his painting that he found this, right? He found this piece. I remember listening to this artist Wolf Kahn. I really love his work. If you guys haven't checked him out, go check him out. Wolf, it's spelled that way exactly. Wolf. He's a bit of a colorist. He doesn't fall in the line of these guys, of course, but his work is definitely something to look at. It's very very interesting work. And he said, look, if you're a landscape painter, somewhere along the words, these are words by Wolfgang. If you're a landscape painter, you must have been a very troubled, human being. And I agree with that. I think that you either had something to overcome. I mean, why is an adult, person looking to go paint little flowers, right? You must be, and now this is just my idea, right? Because I paint little flowers. You must be desperately looking for some sort of peace, right? You must be desperately, because flowers are those rare. I see flowers as angels, right? Amongst the plants, there's so many plants. Something springs up, right? And it's a flower, and it's this rare thing. It's almost like the diamonds, right? Not almost. I think flowers are the diamonds of plants, right? Just like we have rocks and we have diamonds. It's easier to understand. It's easier to understand rocks, diamonds, right? Because now, right? Because we understand that they were created through pressure, right? Through pain. Let's put it that way, through pain. They were created through pain, through pressure. There was a lot of intense pressure in order to create a diamond. And it's my observation too that he saw this in flowers, in plants, right? You see plants, and then boom, a flower springs, right? Out of that. And I think that it's almost like looking at a diamond. They have that quality, right? sort of angelic quality to them. And the color, right? It's almost like they're forcing us to look at them. That's what it feels like. I think that's why a lot of our precious metals are precious, because they force us to look at it. It's the same reason why painters paint, right? There's nothing interesting about looking at a bunch of flowers, right? There's nothing interesting about it. There's nothing interesting at looking at about looking at a still life, right? Some oranges, and a still life painting is a painting with dead objects, right? Quote unquote dead, right? In Spanish we call it naturaleza muerta. It's dead objects, dead nature, right? It's either some sort of meat or some jars with wine and some flowers. It could be anything that is just kind of still there, right? So that's the name, still life. And I believe that this ideas, right? These ideas of the artist creating something so. It's not really it's not interesting, right? I mean, it's not the Kardashian show, right? It's not interesting. It's not WWF. It's not TV, right? It's just flowers. But why do they capture us so much, right? And I think that's what painters do, at least the good ones, right? The good painters, the ones that get to transcend their mental bullshit, actually get to paint something real, right? Actually get to paint something real. And two painters could be painting the same thing, and the one that transcends their mental stuff actually gets to paint it. Not just depict it, but they get to paint it. They get to create artwork. And I think that Van Gogh did. The reason why I believe, again, painters do this is because they're putting the unimportant, right? The everyday stuff on a pedestal. This is what they're doing. I mean, just think about it for a second. Just for a little second. Don't think about it too much. You're talking about flowers. And then they put this ornate frames. It's on a wall. It's put like what do we put on walls? Trophies and certificates, right? Trophies. What do we put on pedestals, right? Monuments, right? When artists sculpt something, we put monuments, something worth paying attention to, something worth remembering, something worth honoring, right? That's really the word. And that's what artists do. It's a huge endeavor that an artist takes in creating art, in creating anything, because, I mean, in the spiritual realm, in the practical, well, whatever, right? But in the spiritual realm, I think it's a huge endeavor. It's a huge work that the artist undertakes, because we're taking everyday objects that we miss in the day-to-day, right? How many times do you think people walk through this field, right, when Van Gogh was painting it, or prior or after, and didn't care about looking at the flowers, did not care about the irises, but Van Gogh went and captured that. It wasn't the moment. It wasn't the light, like as the Impressionists tried to do, because the Impressionists were getting closer. At Van Gogh's level, these guys became self-realized almost, They definitely transcended a lot of the mental noise. At Van Gogh's level, he started painting beyond capturing the plant, the object. He started putting it on a pedestal, in a almost again, a lot of these guys it looks almost like an orchestra, right? Because the moment you start paying attention to it, you start seeing the beauty, right? But you have to pay attention to it, and paying attention to it means you're not thinking, you're just looking at it. You're observing, right? Observation is just looking. It's not judging. It's not thinking. It's not putting any labels. What's the name of that flower? Don't worry about it. Just look at it. Who cares where it was? Who cares what the name of the flower is? Who cares whether it's oil or acrylic? None of that matters. What matters is that he made, right? He made this painting for us to not just enjoy and not just feel happiness, but every little painting, everything that the artist creates is to remind us, look, honor, right? Honor what's in front of you, because you're as you're living life, you're going through it quick, right? We all go through life quick. Right. The next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Oh, I gotta go. I gotta go to school. I gotta pick up the kids from school. I gotta go to work. I gotta on and on and on and on. And you're missing, right? You're missing the what's most important. But we're not doing it because we're good or bad or whatever. We're missing it because we're operating with our mind all the time, right? That's just where human beings are. And artists go and take, something that we don't care, we don't pay much attention to, and then they put it on a pedestal, right? They put this huge ornate frame around it so that it screams, "Look at me." That's why I think it's funny when people say, "Oh, the frame overpowers the painting." Don't worry about it. The frame is screaming to come and look at me. Come and stand here for a little moment of peace, right? Come and stand here. Just They're mirrors into the soul. That's really what they are. Every painting is a mirror into a soul. And I think that's what Van Gogh is offering us in this painting. In every painting, but I think especially in a painting with flowers, as the irises. It's offering us a little moment of peace. After all, that's what moments of peace are, right? Moments of silence. Very, very simple painting, but intricate. This is one of my favorite ones, this piece right here. It almost seems like it's pointing, right? Like it's pointing, right? Like find that, right? It's talked about it everywhere, right? It's talked about it everywhere. This is flowers, right? And one is different, right? And sacred books is I think a sheep, one of the sheep, right, left, and it's almost that one that is different, that is gone in different ways, right? These are all I see all these as arrows, right? These are all arrows. They're almost telling us, and not only to create a movement to go around, because that's what clever artists used to do, right? They used to create sort of pointers, right? Now look at this, now look at that, now look at that. I think this whole painting is orchestrated in a very soft way, right? To come to the well, I think this is self-realization, really. That's what I think it is, and I think he was able to find it in painting. At least, if not in his everyday life. At least when he sat and paint, he was able to touch that. He was able to, and he shared this with us. He found it, right? He found it. He was able to find it, and he shared. He recorded it in a painting, and he shared it with the rest of the world. So I think it's pretty cool. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this little commentary on Vincent Van Gogh Irises, painted in 1889. This was probably. I think this made people like, what the hell? I think this was. Remember what was being painted back then. I mean, just think about it. People were looking at artwork very different, right? People were looking at artwork in a very different way, and this is a very revolutionary way of looking at art. And I think they were looking at it as many of us go into a museum and look at a Rothko. We're like, what's up with this color swatch, right? And then people start going, I can do that, right? I don't think it's as easy as that. And then, I don't think it's just the skill. Again, Van Gogh wasn't trying to prove with skill level. He was proving something else. He was pointing at something else, right? John Singer Sargent and other artists were proving with skill and also transcending some of the stuff, right? Some of the norms. But Van Gogh was definitely a butterfly. It was definitely a butterfly. I'll leave you guys with that. My name is Jose Trujillo. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Adios.